Good evening, and thank you for joining us for the Superintendent's Listening Session with Dr. Boyd Michael, our Superintendent of Schools here in Washington County. You're no stranger to listening sessions, but this is actually the second one that we've done just this week. We did one with staff yesterday. We'd like to welcome our parents, guardians, families, and community members to this one. So just to kind of recap things, we're going to have Dr. Michael kick off with our Return to Learn plan, and then we'll get into a little bit of the metrics where we stand today with COVID-19, and we'll take some questions.
Okay, thank you, Erin, and welcome parents and community members. We're glad to have you with us this evening for the listening session. I know it's more a question and answer session, and questions have been submitted by many parents. I do have people monitoring the chat room, so if you have additional questions, feel free to ask. If we have time here, staff will interrupt us and we'll try to answer some additional questions. So a little bit about where we are right now. We've been working with our Return to Learn plan. We have 5 stages in that plan. Right now we're saying we're in a pause, actually kind of really a phase 1 where we're back to every student being in virtual learning. For a while we were in stage 2 and 3 where we had pre-K and kindergarten students attending every day for those students that wanted to attend, as well as special ed students, 504 students, our English language learner students, students that didn't have internet connectivity, and Tech High was back at one point. We're hoping to be able to return at some point into stage 4. We currently have that scheduled for January 11th, although our metrics at this time are not looking very optimistic. And we will let parents know before or on January 4th exactly our plans for January 11th. But again, at this point, we're not looking very optimistic. We do review our metrics every day. Unfortunately, today we went up in positivity. We're 12.75 positivity. That's the highest that I think we've been at this point. So that's certainly not encouraging news. As we look on to our cases per 100,000, Washington County has about 52,000 residents, and we had an 81.62 positivity rate. So probably roughly about 120 cases reported in the last 24 hours. So again, that's very high compared to where we were. We used this document, which was part of something submitted to superintendents and announced publicly by Dr. Salmon, the state superintendent, as well as Governor Larry Hogan. It's really the metrics that we use to kind of expand or pull back on our Return to Learn plan. When we're under 5% and under 15 cases per 100,000, significantly under that, we'd be looking to move right away into stage 4 or to expand our in-person learning. Right now, we're at that point that we're over 5% and we're over 15 cases per 100,000. And that's what's put us to the far right-hand side of the chart, which says limited in-person instruction, or even backed up to the point that we are right now. So this is really our guiding document that we use. I don't see us making it to stage 4 until we get back close or below 5%. If we kind of get back to just slightly above 5% and just kind of remain flat for a long period of time, we may look at another stage to return to at some point. So with that, Erin, I think we're ready to take some questions.
All right, yes, and so we did ask people to sign up and submit some questions in advance. You did have the opportunity to review those questions, to review those comments from parents and guardians, and we looked for some consistent themes, some commonalities, and we've developed some questions here to start off with. So with that, we had a parent who acknowledged that many students have been in school for almost a year, going back to March 13th was the day that we first had to close schools. So what is WCPS doing to get our students back in school as soon as possible?
Well, obviously we want students back in school as soon as possible. If you watched the board meeting a few minutes ago, Dr. Willow reviewed some of our statistics, some of our metrics of some of our students. We're down in the percent of students with A's and B's. Unfortunately, we're up with students that have D's and F's. Our attendance is declining. Our chronic absenteeism is in serious concern for many of our students. So we obviously want students back in school as soon as possible. We have continued to enhance our safety measures throughout the system. From where we were in the spring to where we are now, we've made tremendous progress with simple things like, our sanitation devices being around, a lot of signage and things like that. We have over 10,000 desk shields. We've been very successful with masks and hand washing and physical distancing with our stage 2, stage 3 students that were in session. So I think we've made a lot of progress and we're prepared to return students safely. Just simply right now, our metrics are too high to do so. But we are very anxious to return. Teachers that I talk to every day, they're anxious to have students return, but we all recognize that the metrics are really what's keeping us out at this point.
Right, and similarly on that note, this pandemic is affecting our families, our students, our staff, all in different ways. So one parent comments that we have not even reached the peak of the COVID outbreak yet. So what will it take for Washington County Public Schools to just continue virtual learning for the rest of the year?
Well, I mean, certainly that is a possibility. I hate to think about it because I know we'd continue to have some students that would struggle with that, even from an emotional, social aspect. So we'd hate to see that happen for the rest of the year. There is that possibility. We just cannot predict what's going to happen with the virus. I'm optimistic with the vaccine coming. I'm optimistic that I've seen other counties that have spiked in numbers and have seen the numbers decline as more people wear a mask or more people become, somewhat immune to the disease after having it, or again, as people receive the vaccine. I think we've proven that we can be safe in schools, but there is every possibility that this could go on for an extended period of time. So we need to recognize that. And we're not going to do anything but maintain the safety of our students and our staff and our community. We definitely don't want to contribute to anything negative in that way. So yeah, we'll just have to stay tuned and see what happens. But our goal is to get students back, but we will not do it until it's somewhat safe.
And I think it's important to add too that the students who were invited to return to school in stages 2 and 3, when the schools did the outreach to those families, it is an option for students to continue on distance learning from home if families don't feel comfortable with them returning to the in-person instruction setting.
Right. So unless we move to stage 5, which is where all students are back in school, parents will always have that option that they can exercise for themselves. So if we're in stage 4, at some point, we remain in stage 4 for the rest of the year. And as a parent, you're not prepared for your child to return and they're being successful at home, I would encourage you to exercise your right as a parent to keep your child home.
All right, moving on to our next question, kind of going back to the governor's flow chart that we referenced earlier. Who decides when schools should close and when they can reopen? Is that a decision that comes from the state or at the county level?
Yeah, what's been shared with us is really that last chart that I showed you that I said Dr. Salmon and Governor Hogan provided. Dr. Salmon meets with us each week. She's been describing that as guardrails, kind of the guidelines of what to use. She continues to remind us that we're not bound by those numbers or those metrics, but I think they're pretty tight guardrails and something we're going to abide by. But we're making decisions here in Washington County. And again, we're trying to do everything possible to safely get students back in school for their benefit and also provide opportunities for parents to make other decisions as they choose for their own children.
All right, so guardrails aside, why can't parents then decide whether to send their child to school? If they want their child to be in school, why can't they have the option to send them?
I think right now they do have the option when we're open to do that. I've heard other counties talk about, well, we'll let the parents that want to send their children, and the teachers that want to come to school will come and teach them. Places that's been tried, it has not worked. One factor or the other limits what's going to go on. So either there's not enough teachers to teach the students that want to return, or there's not enough students to return for the teachers that are there. I think it's really working. Often there's more children returning than there's staff willing to come in. So in Washington County right now, it's an opportunity for teachers to choose where they teach from. When we've opened back up into whatever stage we open back up in, we would expect staff to return. But this is really a balancing act. In places that have described that, I've seen very little success where that's worked, where it's been an option for both teachers and students to return.
I know that in your discussions with the community, in your emails, in your phone calls, and even in your talks with community members and staff, one of the major concerns from the COVID-19 pandemic and the school closure is the achievement gap that is widening from this pandemic. One question asked, are there any plans to adjust the school calendar because of COVID? For example, summer learning sessions, longer school days, or even extending the school year?
I don't see those right now as mandates for all students, but I do see those as opportunities for all students. So Dr. Willow and Mr. Neil Becker are going to co-chair a committee for me starting here at the first of the year. They're going to examine our current practices and what we might do to help close the achievement gap for students. And I think we're experiencing an achievement gap from our most gifted AP, IB students to some degree all the way to grade level children and children who might have other struggles. So there's a significant opportunity that we need to provide for additional time. I think that could come in after school, before school, summer school opportunities, but also just in quality instruction throughout the day that students should be receiving. So I don't know that I see an extension of the school year or a mandate for that. I think that would have to come from the governor's level at some point. But I do see that Washington County will provide every opportunity for students to help with their academic achievement. And we really need the cooperation of parents to make that happen. So I see those things before, after school, tutoring sessions, potentially Saturday opportunities. I would encourage parents, if for any reason you feel like you're not getting what you need right now for your child, that you take advantage of something and contact your principal and we see what we can do to help support them.
I think that actually leads right into our next question that we have for you about tutoring being available for students struggling with the subject. And really, parents utilizing that school principal as their first point of contact and helping their student get the support that they need.
So we're really seeing one-on-one tutoring be a huge success. I know that a lot of teachers are providing small group tutoring and individual tutoring with students. So again, if your child's struggling, we do have tutoring available. It may be your teacher's child, or your child's teacher, or it may be an IA we have in the building, or even a teacher from another building. But as you see the need for tutoring for your child, I would encourage you to contact your principal and take advantage of those opportunities. We did have a grant that ran out here in December for tutoring, but we're continuing with our tutoring efforts because we see that as being so important and being so successful so far.
All right. Our sports programs, our extracurricular activities are a big component of our educational system, supplementing the academic and developmental programs. We did get in a brief fall sports season. What are we thinking the winter and the spring sports seasons will look like?
Yeah, so former athletic director and coach, I mean, just from the sports side, it just kind of breaks my heart that things aren't as normal as they normally are. Also, our bands, our choral programs, our extracurricular activities are a vital part of our students' just daily lives as well as their school lives. So we'd like to see these things continue as normal as possible. Obviously, right now, in person would be very difficult. We've encouraged clubs and organizations. I was in a band room today listening to the flute section, and they were going to make some various ensembles and try to put some things together into a kind of a video of some type. So those types of things we would encourage people to do to maintain that social aspect of school and participate in the extracurricular of things. Right now, we did start virtually our winter sports program. We did get in a fall season. We were one of, I think, 3 counties that did get some fall season in up to this point. Unfortunately, at this point, fall is over, and we're prepared to try to move into winter at some point. I don't see that happening in person until these metrics get a little bit better. But it is possible that we will return with small groups of students in person with sports. I know some of the other schools have started, 2 or 3 other schools started actually with live in-person sports programs, but their metrics are a little bit better than where we are right now.
All right, one parent was curious specifically about the balance with academics and sports. Why are sports able to resume before all students are back in school?
Well, again, right now we're only resumed virtually, so we don't have athletes in school. But I would say there is a possibility, as long as we're working in that direction and our metrics start to come down, we would probably group our athletes in such a small group that if someone was to get COVID, it would only, be a handful of students that would be quarantined or be exposed to COVID at a time. I don't know that we'll have in-person sports activities before we're back in person with our students, but I'm not going to rule it out at this point because those extracurriculars are that important to our students. But right now, our metrics just do not support in-person sporting events.
All right, changing gears a little bit. We've talked about the academic gap that has resulted. We can measure things like differences in attendance and academic achievement, but one thing that's not as easily measured are some of those social, emotional impacts of the pandemic, which are undoubtedly at play in so many children in our school system. So when students return to schools, can outside mental health agencies come into the schools and work with those children face to face to address that mental health, social, emotional component that we've seen with struggles over the pandemic?
Absolutely. We're doing some of that virtually right now, but as soon as we get back face to face, regardless whether it's in stage 4 or some other stage, we'd anticipate taking advantage of all of our resources, including our mental health providers, to support our students. Absolutely.
All right. Why has grading not been adjusted for distance learning? Some parents have said that online learning is different from in-person learning for their students. And even people reporting that their child usually gets good grades, but they're struggling now with online learning and they're seeing lower grades. How would you respond to a question like that?
You know, I think it's one of the tougher questions right now. I mean, we just don't want students to get an A because they've always gotten an A. We expect students to earn the grades that they achieve. For elementary, we have a standards-based report card. The standards haven't changed because we're in the middle of a pandemic. We've really tried to work with our curriculum specialists to identify those things that are the most important things to learn in 3rd grade, 5th grade, 8th grade, and try to target that. That is what we're trying to measure as we're grading students, as we're reflecting on the standards-based report card. So that really doesn't change. I mean, I know it's very difficult virtually to learn what you might learn better in person, but those standards haven't changed, those curriculum standards haven't changed. And the next grade level that you move to and the rigor of the next grade level that you move to when we return, hopefully in the fall, to a more normal school life is not going to change. So that preparation is very important. I'd say if your child is achieving slightly lower than they normally do, just continue to work with them. Take advantage of the tutoring opportunities we have. We have those available for even students that have an A. We should be helping students if they're not achieving at the rate they normally would. Make sure that you're reaching out to the school and ask and expect to receive additional support and help when you need to.
All right. You shared with the board members this evening, even some of the statistics of failure rates. And what is the plan going forward for students who are failing their classes? Some parents were curious whether they would have the option for their child to repeat this grade again next year.
Well, we're obviously concerned about the failure rate, concerned about particularly the numbers in secondary schools the students are failing. For some, in high school particularly, they'll obviously have to repeat the course if they don't earn a passing grade to achieve the credits that they need towards graduation. I think the decision to retain a child is obviously one we need to work on together, parents, teachers, administrators, counselors, and talk about. I think if a parent believes their child should be retained, that needs to be a serious conversation. We need to talk about where the child is, you know, social development, all those types of things, as well as academic development, and make sure it's the right decision to retain students. We might retain students against the wishes of parents, if necessary, if we believe that's in their best interest. But I hope it's going to be a collaborative effort between parents and the school system, because we have a lot of decisions to make. It's been challenging with the virtual setting for many of the children to achieve at their normal levels, and we want to see them be successful, not only this year, but we want to set them up for success long term. And again, I think that's going to be a big decision between parents, teachers, administrators, and counselors.
All right. Moving on to our next question, the virtual learning environment does create unique circumstances, and specifically for some of our special education students, what is WCPS doing to meet the needs of students with IEPs and 504s while all students now are engaged in distance learning?
Well, absolutely, to our very best ability, the job is to meet the IEP goals and supports that are being placed for students. So those things are happening virtually. It might be the teacher reaching out. It might be through initial instruction of the classroom teacher. It might be through additional support from instructional assistants. I've seen that in many, many cases. I know our occupational therapists or speech therapists are all trying to reach out and work with students differently than in person. It is a struggle, but the expectation is that we continue to meet those IEP goals, those 504 expectations. If for any reason a parent believes that their goals have not been met, or the services have not been provided to the parent, again, I would encourage you reach out to the teacher, absolutely reach out to the principal, and they'll follow up, and we'll make whatever adjustments that are possible to be made over the virtual environment to make sure those needs are being met.
school systems use standardized testing as one of the metrics to gauge student learning and to best assess how to meet the instructional needs of students. Are we still going to be moving forward with standardized testing this year in light of virtual learning?
Well, I think traditional tests that we use, or I don't know if I'd call them standardized tests, but metrics that we use to help measure students' reading levels, things like that, assess where they are with their math skills and things. We'll continue to use those, but they're really for instructional purposes. State testing is really a different question. Right now, we anticipate somehow they're still planning on giving MCAP testing in the spring, but they've said they won't do it virtually. So unless students are back in the building, that would be very difficult to see any way that MCAP testing is going to occur. So we are going to see potentially testing. It's really too soon to tell. So we'll just have to kind of wait and see on some of that.
Okay. The class of 2020 certainly had an interesting year, an interesting graduation. Many students in the class of 2021 haven't even been in class in person with many of their peers. So how will graduation requirements be modified for our seniors to account for distance learning?
So far with the state, the only information we have is that some of the state testing for seniors where they're required to take certain tests, they will not be required to take those tests and or pass those tests at this point. But other than that, all the graduation requirements, the courses that you need to pass to earn credits for graduation, those are still in place. We've asked about student service learning hours. As far as we know, the students will still have to earn their total of 75 student service learning hours. So we haven't seen a lot of forgiveness in that area, other than the state testing requirements will be waived for seniors and students that have been in those testing courses. But we'll keep seniors posted. We generally make sure right after the first of the year that we tell seniors the things that they need to work on to graduate. I'm sure those things will be in place. We definitely want to see our seniors be successful, so we'll work hard to make them successful.
Speaking of the ultimate success for seniors, that graduation event is certainly a milestone landmark in anyone's life. So what are we thinking about in terms of graduation? Are we looking at plans for even outdoor in-person graduation ceremonies?
Well, I felt bad last year, even though the seniors lost 3 months of their senior year. It was kind of that culminating spring sports season, spring concerts, the prom, traditional graduation. Our seniors this year, I mean, they haven't even been in school. Many of them haven't been in school. So I feel awful for where we are at this point. We're still, hopeful that we're going to be back in school by the time we get to spring. I'm optimistic that we will have in-person graduation. One of the things that happened last year, right at the last minute, Governor Hogan said we could have graduation. That announcement was made, I think, on a Thursday. We checked with the health department. The health department was not aware of any restrictions. They basically said, you heard what we heard. And we immediately planned for graduation on Monday without asking very many questions. And I think we had a very successful outside graduation. Unfortunately, the governor has shared information about outdoor events. He hadn't mentioned specifically graduation, but if it were to be today, we would not be able to do the things that we did last year. But I'm still very optimistic that that will change by the time we get to spring. So we are continuing to move forward. We're planning our graduation ceremonies, at the schools, at the ARC, at the Maryland Theater. We have those places reserved. We're going to continue to plan for them. Some schools might even have an alternative outdoor graduation, indoor graduation, if the circumstances are such that we can have them. So we're going to try our very best to have a normal graduation season, but that'll remain to be seen, like many other things.
All right. We have explored distance learning, I'd say, extensively now, even when students can return to schools. Does WCPS have plans for a permanent online school platform?
I could see that happening. Right now in Maryland, there's blended learning. So 20% of the time students would have to be in class, 80% of the time they could be online. We do offer 700 or 800 credits a year that way or more, but I could see an entire school being developed that way. But it's going to take some state approval, some state relaxation of some rules. It would be different than our virtual environment right now. I don't see it necessarily being 35-minute classes. I think it would have to be for the ideal student that virtual learning works. And obviously, a student would have to earn credits. They'd have to pass courses, take tests. All those types of things would all be part of it. But I can see that happening. I can see that happening very quickly if the state makes some changes and approves the virtual learning platforms across the state.
All right, we have a few more questions specifically addressing safety in schools when students are able to return. And then we'll start going to our chat room to get some questions from attendees. So how does contact tracing work in the schools? Are the parents and guardians required to tell the school principal if their child tests positive for COVID-19?
Well, we'd certainly expect parents to let us know if their children test positive. That's how we help protect everybody. So I think in a pandemic, it's everyone's responsibility to report when they've had COVID so that we can do our contact tracing. We have an excellent team. The response team here does an amazing job immediately doing contact tracing. We don't let the sun set. Well, the sun might set, but we don't let people go home until we've completed our contact tracing for the day. So we find out from the health department when people have been tested positive that we're responsible for, or we report to the health department if we're aware of circumstances of someone having a positive case. But our team does an amazing job. If you've been part of that process, you know you've been asked questions and who you've been in contact with, and they do a great job. We don't hesitate for a moment to quarantine staff or students because it's just a safety for everybody. So it's very, very important that we cooperate, and if parents report or students report if they've been tested positive, we continue to work with the health department. We continue to share information with the health department.
Right, we do have a good number of students who are actually attending daycare and participating in their virtual classes online. So some parents want to know why they're able to send their child to daycare, but they're not able to send their child to school.
Well, I think what we've seen, particularly with younger children, the spread among younger children has been very minimal. Even when our pre-K and kindergarten were in session, we had fairly large classes and we had them 6 feet apart, but I mean, we had them wall to wall, and we had very, very little had no evidence of spread. We did have a few children that had COVID at some point or had a parent that had COVID. So we were very successful with that. But I think with our metrics this high, and we involve so many adults in our program, from custodians and food service workers, you know, it's a lot larger group than just the daycare providers. So right now we're just not in that position, but I do think that we can be successful, particularly with our younger children, when our metrics improve.
Now, we did have small groups of students for in-person learning. So students who remained we had small groups of students for in-person learning, but most students were still on distance learning. So parents may not be as familiar for the safety measures that we had in place in schools. Can you talk a little bit about those?
Well, we were requiring students to remain 6 feet apart. I mean, sometimes we move in the hallway or lining up at the lunch lines and things like that. We had to remind students to separate. Hand sanitizer everywhere, wiping down desks and things like that everywhere. I was in schools today and I noticed in 2 different principals' office, 6-foot tape measures or yardsticks, meter sticks that were taped together as their 6-foot measuring tool. And you go in and out of classrooms and you can see the desks are 6 feet apart. So a lot of things like that. Increased efforts by our custodial staff to spray rooms with disinfectant, things of that nature. Our filtering systems are improving as we're working on adding MERV 13 filters throughout our school system. We don't have all of those in place, but that'll only be a partial measure, but we're working on things like that. So just a lot of effort to everyone work hard cooperatively to wash our hands, keep our mask on. I was very pleased to see our pre-K and kindergarten students. I thought that would be a real struggle having them keep their mask on, but most of them did a very good job at that. So all those types of things are really just a lot of cooperation from adults and from students. And on top of all the things that we've ordered over $1 million worth of protective equipment at this point. And we made it readily available to our staff and students as they need those things. So we've really ramped up our efforts to try to keep everyone safe.
And I think it's important to note too that those health and safety protocols that we've asked of students also apply to our staff in schools.
Absolutely.
So everyone is on the same page, following the same guidelines and modeling that positive behavior to help prevent the spread of the virus. We just got the green light for the vaccine. I know the initial deployments are starting to go out, but parents want to know are staff and students going to be required to get the vaccine when it's available?
Yeah, I don't have any authority to require people to get the vaccine or any way to expect people to get the vaccine. I would encourage people to consult their healthcare provider, and you know, everything appears to be the vaccine is safe and effective. So I'm optimistic that it's going to be available. I know that Dr. Salmon's advocating it for educators to have the vaccine available to them. I think we're going to set up vaccine sites, particularly for staff. So I don't have any way to mandate that or require that in any way. But I think, again, as more people get the vaccine, as more people have had COVID, as more people practice, again, there's mask, hand washing, 6-foot distancing. I think all those things will improve our safety measures and help us to return to school and help get our metrics down quickly.
You know, the saying goes, it takes a village, and we've had significant effort from our parents, our students, our staff in getting through the COVID-19 pandemic. One parent had asked specifically, what can parents do to express their appreciation to school staff who are working so hard under these circumstances, these challenges, to really support our students?
Well, I think the words thank you, thank you, thank you are certainly not enough, but I think they are appreciated. I talked to a number of staff members today as I was visiting schools. I mean, probably couple of the most rewarding things a staff teacher particularly can get, but even ESP and our administrators, we see that opportunity come where a student has really learned something, and we kind of feed off of that. But we also feed off those smiling faces of kids and those emotional, you know, maybe physical hugs or just smiles and things like that. Those things are a lot tougher virtually, but I think a thank you to staff, a card to staff, just anything, you know, we're not really encouraging parents to get on Zoom at all with their child, really let your child on Zoom, but, you know, just to pop in and say how much you thank teachers without interrupting a lesson, to send them an email, a word of encouragement. I think any of those things would be appreciated by our staff. They're just working extremely hard. Again, all of our staff members, educational support personnel, our teachers, our administrators. So anything you could do to say thank you. Have your children thank your teachers. I think that goes a long ways too. Acknowledge how hard staff's working to help your child be successful. And I think that would be greatly appreciated. I certainly thank our staff. I try to thank them everywhere I go. It's just, thank you just doesn't seem like enough for all the work that they're doing.
Right. It certainly has been an extraordinary year, but we have seen extraordinary work from both students and staff alike.
Absolutely. I've seen students produce amazing work at this point, and I've been very, very pleased with many of the things I've seen. Even though we're struggling with things, there are a lot of success stories, not only from teachers, but a lot of success stories from our students as well. I see we have a couple questions that have been put up here from the chat. One thing about snow day tomorrow. You know, I know this isn't a popular decision, but I'm going to stick with it. You can blame me for this. I know it's a potential big snow tomorrow, probably would impact a couple days in a normal year. But right now we're trying to keep the continuity of learning going. So we want to keep moving forward with our instruction. And, you know, it's early here in December. If we start taking snow days right now and we have a long winter with a lot of snow, we'll be pushing into June. And that's just not a successful period of time for us as far as instruction. So I know it's not popular. We only have 5 days to make it until winter break. You know, it's not like we're in the middle of a month long until we get to winter break. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Monday, Tuesday, and students are done. So hang in there with us. I know it's an unpopular decision, but you know, 2:30 tomorrow, you can go out and play in the snow and enjoy it all you want. And same thing on Thursday. And it sounds like the snow will be around for the weekend, so you'll be able to play in it after that. But right now, it may or may not be a popular decision, but we need to continue with our continuity of instruction.
All right, and we do have one other question about student work. They have asynchronous and synchronous work. You might be able to talk a little bit about some of the standards that the state set early in the school year regarding how much required time of asynchronous and synchronous work that students need to complete.
I know there's been discussion about a cleaning day on Wednesday or an off day on Wednesday for planning time and things like that, or less time on Zoom and things like that. But really the state has set a standard that we need to meet. And we are just barely meeting that standard with our 3.5 hours of instruction a day online. So that's synchronous learning we have to continue to do daily and at the minimum rate that we're doing. One of the struggles we're seeing with asynchronous work, the work that students are assigned to do on their own, is some students are not completing that work or not getting that work turned in. And again, parents, a big thing you can help with. I mean, I know you've always asked your children when they get home from school, do you have any homework and things like that? Ask them how they're doing. Do they have missing assignments? Check your parent view and check and see if they have missing assignments, and try to get that asynchronous or synchronous work completed and get it turned in. That's one way you can definitely help a student's grade.
Right, and for students who haven't accessed Parent View before, that information, that access can be granted by calling your child's school. They'll give you a PIN activation key so you can see that and see assignments as they go along. Again, teachers have to enter grades every 2 weeks, is that correct?
Minimally, they have to enter grades every 2 weeks. If it goes longer period of time than that and you're not seeing grades, again, contact your principal. You should see grades entered at least every 2 weeks. I would hope even more often than that. And feedback to your child even on distance learning.
All right, I think Dr. Gary Willow, our Associate Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction, is coming up with a question from the chat. So I will let him take over here.
Dr. Michael, when in-person learning starts up, what will that look like for students?
Well, our hope is when we start back to in-person learning that we would come back into stage 4. Again, it's difficult to tell if our metrics drag out and drag out and drag out, but we get back down towards 6 or 7, that might be some other stage. But my hope is we come back in stage 4. We would anticipate that pre-K, K, first grade would be here every day for those students that parents wanted their child to attend every day. Students grades 2 through 12 would attend on an A-day, B-day schedule and an alternating Friday. So we'd have Monday, Wednesday, and alternating Friday students. We'd have Tuesday, Thursday, alternating Friday students. So that would basically be it. So my hope is we return in stage 4, but we'll have to wait and see.
And Dr. Michael, how have we helped educators with distance learning? What professional development opportunities have been provided?
So I was in a school today and a young teacher was very excited that he was going to have the opportunity to share with other kindergarten teachers some of the math strategies that they were working on. So a lot of things happening that teachers are teaching best practices. We've added a tremendous number of technology tools since we started. So when students return to the classroom, they're going to see that their teacher has a huddle cam. They might see it now already, but indirectly because they're obviously viewing that. But it's a camera that's capturing the room or capturing the teacher, is used as a document camera. We've provided new televisions for every room so teachers can use that in a variety of ways. We have headsets that are available to students and to teachers. We've just continued to expand our technology tools, professional development that goes along with that. And all these things are to enhance the learning environment to make it more engaging for children to be part of the, help them with their instruction.
Thank you, Dr. Michael.
Thank you. I don't know if we have any other questions, Aaron, from the chat room. Again, we provided a lot of resources to our staff, and we're really trying to reach out to our students with tutoring and help and support. We could have a long ways to go with virtual learning. It's hard to tell when we'll be back to stage 5 and things back to normal. So parents, we really need to continue to work on things. I see one more question here, if I can read that. Okay, we'll be before. Oh, yeah. So question about before and after care for stage 4. We have been in contact with our daycare providers that have provided before and after school care when we've been in school. Right now, we're in stage 2 and stage 3. We just did not have enough students to make it economically feasible for our daycare providers to provide those services. We do have indications for some of them when we return into stage 4 that some of our before and after school daycare providers will return as well and be available for before and after school care. So we'll be working with them. If we make it to stage 4, when we make it to stage 4, we'll make announcements about who's available and if those resources are available.
All right, again, we just want to remind folks that, again, our previous announcement of possibly returning to in-person instruction on January 11th in the new year, we will be making an announcement about that date, if we can go forward or not, on January 4th. So just for parents to be aware of that date, to be looking for an announcement from WCPS to share more information about moving forward through the school year at that time.
Yep. We'll be providing that information again. Right now, the metrics are not looking very promising, so I don't want to get people's hopes up too much, but we're going to continue to do everything possible to get your children back in school as soon as it is safe to do so. We will not hesitate to do that, but as soon as it's safe for students and staff to return. I'd probably like to end by just saying, parents and guardians and grandparents and neighbors and whoever's helping our children out there, we greatly appreciate your efforts. Our teachers didn't sign up for pandemic teaching or virtual teaching like we're going through, and many of you didn't sign up to help your children in this way. And I know it's been a tremendous daycare, childcare issue for many of you. I know for some of you, your children are struggling in various ways, academically or social emotionally. We wish this could be different, but we're all going to have to continue to persevere together and get through this. But again, much like our teachers, say thank you to them, and our administrators and educational personnel, support personnel. I want to say thank you to each of you that's helping your children during this time of crisis. It's a mess. It really is a mess. But I think together we're all going to get through this. I don't know if we're going to be better off for it or not, Aaron, but we're going to get through this. We're going to get through this. Continue to support your child. Do not get COVID weary. Your child's education is extremely important. Extremely important. So please keep them engaged. I would encourage you to have your child turn their camera on, kind of monitor what they're doing. Make sure they have a great place to learn from, that they get a good breakfast and they get a good night's sleep and they get up and they get ready to learn. Encourage them to do their best. I always say read, read, and read. If you can't help in any other way, I encourage you to do that. There just seems to be no substitute for that, if nothing else. So with that, Aaron, if we don't have other questions, I do want to wish everybody a very happy holiday season. Whatever you might celebrate, we certainly encourage you to enjoy the celebration. Please try to be safe, wash your hands, keep that 6-foot distancing, wear a mask even if you're with family. It's very important that we don't continue to add to these negative metrics that we have. But again, I would just wish everybody a happy holiday, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. We are very optimistic that 2021 is going to be a better year than 2020. So.
All righty. Well, Dr. Michael, thank you so much for answering questions. Thank you everyone for submitting questions, for submitting your thoughts and ideas for feedback. And thank you for listening in and joining us tonight. So with that, have a happy, safe, healthy holiday.
Thank you.